or greater wealth. While America was just beginning its experiment with democracy, Versailles gave testimony to the power of kings. Carlo was an awestruck provincial. Rumblings of discontent with King Louis XVI and aristocratic privilege were no concern of his. That Queen Marie Antoinette and a frivolous court were draining France of precious resources did nothing to diminish Carlo's delight in everything he saw. He dreamed that one day his children would become noblemen in that glittering citadel of power in which he had no place. For years, Carlo had nourished a plan. In Versailles, he saw it come true. He secured Napoleon a scholarship to a school in France. Napoleon set foot in France for the first time in the winter of 1778. A thin, sallow 9-year-old, accustomed to the warmth of the Mediterranean, suddenly alone on the windswept plains of northern France. A scholarship boy at the Royal Military College at Brienne-le-Château. He could hardly speak French. For the next 5 years, there would be no holidays, no visits home. He had no love of France. He still thought of himself as a grudging subject of an alien king.
He
thinks of himself as a Corsican. He is surrounded by students who are the children of French aristocrats, and they have nothing in common with this little foreigner. And since he is quite proud, he becomes a loner.
Napoleon would one day turn his sympathies toward France, but not without years of resentment and struggle. He was 15 when he was promoted to the Royal Military Academy in Paris. Along with the sons of some of France's greatest families, he would learn the splendors of French civilization. The Royal Academy was as much a finishing school, turning officers into gentlemen, as a war college. We were magnificently fed and served, Bonaparte said, treated in every way like officers possessed of great wealth. The poor Corsican teenager still felt like an outsider. He had entered a world of opulence and luxury, but it only served to fuel his scorn for the privilege and snobbery of the French nobility. One teacher described him as quiet and solitary, frightfully egotistical, proud, ambitious, aspiring to everything. He would go far, his school report read, in favorable circumstances. He began his apprenticeship as a soldier when he was 16, a lowly second lieutenant, training with the best artillery unit in the French army. He grew expert at sighting a gun, handling rammer and shot, deploying men. One of the greatest careers in military history had begun.
He feels that the regime will not let him have the position he dreams of. The top positions are reserved for the noblemen, while Napoleon comes from minor nobility, poor people.
Frustrated in his military ambitions, Bonaparte dreamed of becoming famous as an author, wrote a brief history of Corsica, even tried his hand at a novel.
He
knows that he's capable of great things. He feels that perhaps he's destined for greatness. But at that point, how can he possibly believe it? He's bored to death.
Always alone among men, Bonaparte wrote, I come home to dream by myself and to give myself over to all the forces of my melancholy. My thoughts dwell on death. What fury drives me to wish for my own destruction? No doubt because I see no place for myself in this world. It was the revolution that would set Bonaparte free. On July 14th, 1789, Paris erupted. Angry crowds stormed through the streets, crying liberty, equality, brotherhood. France was thrown into turmoil. The monarchy itself tottered on the edge of destruction. A defiant National Assembly challenged the absolute right of the king, stripped nobles and clergy of their ancient feudal privileges, fracturing a social order that had endured for centuries. After years of injustice and inequality, the revolution had begun. It would take years before it would end. As the revolution gained momentum, Bonaparte was serving in the army far from Paris. He distrusted the violent mobs, but welcomed the changes transforming the country.
He is certainly not a revolutionary before the beginning of the revolution. But Bonaparte welcomes the revolution as good news. It almost has a religious impact for him, because all of a sudden he feels that the revolution is going to open up French society.
La révolution va ouvrir la société française. L'abolition des privilèges, le fait que la société française ne va plus
It would
connaître
abolish privileges,
hiérarchie,
put an end to hierarchies and the kind of condescension from which Napoleon had suffered while he was growing up.
jeune Napoléon dans sa jeunesse. Bonaparte était un jeune homme.
Bonaparte was a man of his times, and to be 20 years old in 1789 is very important. Napoleon's destiny and the destiny of the whole country become the same.
In the summer of 1792, Bonaparte was on leave in Paris and witnessed the last gasp of the French monarchy. In June, a mob stormed the Tuileries Palace and forced the king to wear the red revolutionary bonnet. In August, the mob massacred the king's Swiss guard. King Louis XVI was dethroned. The French Republic was proclaimed that fall.
Napoleon wants to be part of this new world. He wants to play a role. And he starts in a place he knows very well. He starts with Corsica.
Donc il commence par la Corse.
Bonaparte was 23, an idealistic revolutionary, when he took leave of absence from the French army and returned to Corsica. The French Republic had made Corsica a part of France and given Corsicans all the rights and liberties of French citizens. Bonaparte, a lieutenant in the island's National Guard, threw himself into Corsican politics. Pasquale Paoli was the island's governor. Paoli had been Bonaparte's childhood hero, the leader of the Corsican War against France. Now Bonaparte dreamed of rising to power, standing by Paoli's side. But he would be bitterly disappointed. Paoli did not trust him. A ragazzone inesperto, Paoli called him. A big, inexperienced boy. The Corsican patriot thought Bonaparte too ambitious, too self-centered,